He held up my Excel printout like he'd just found a kindergarten art project. "This is your model, or is this homework from a community college?" The half-laugh, half-sneer was enough to make the entire boardroom go silent in that uncomfortable way. I knew right then, this new manager, with his striped blue tie and hollow confidence, wouldn't just destroy the financial model I'd spent years building, he'd bring the whole company down with it. But what he didn't know was that I'd already prepared my counterattack. And when the time came, I'd charge him for every minute he'd have to swallow those mocking words. My name is Elena Graves, and at 38, I'd weathered enough financial storms at Northwick Strategies to know when one was brewing. That Tuesday morning in March, sitting in Conference Room A with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago, I watched the perfect storm take shape in the form of Miles Renard. Miles had that particular brand of MBA confidence that comes from 2 years at Wharton and 0 years in the trenches. His hair was slicked back with enough product to waterproof a boat, and his PowerPoint slides had more animations than actual data. He'd been brought in 3 weeks ago as the new VP of Financial Planning, my direct supervisor, despite having never built a model that survived a real audit. "Let's talk about efficiency," he said, clicking to a slide titled, "Streamlining Our Processes." My stomach tightened. In corporate speak, streamlining usually meant destroying everything that works. He picked up the printed copy of my forecasting model, all 47 pages of it, with color-coded tabs I'd meticulously organized. The model had predicted the 2019 revenue shortfall within 0.3%, caught the supply chain crisis before our competitors, and saved the company $8 million in unnecessary hedging last quarter alone, but Miles held it like it was contaminated. "This," he announced to the room of 12 senior staff members, "is exactly what's wrong with our department, complexity for complexity's sake." He flipped through the pages with theatrical disgust. Hidden sheets, nested formulas, redundant checks. "Elena, did you intentionally make this incomprehensible? Or was that just a happy accident?" Jennifer from Risk Management shifted uncomfortably. David from Treasury studied his coffee cup. Nobody met my eyes. "Those redundant checks are controls," I said, keeping my voice level. "They prevent cascade errors when someone doesn't know how to build a simple model," Miles interrupted. He pulled up his laptop, projecting my model onto the screen. "Watch and learn, people. This is how we modernize." With surgical precision, he began deleting. First went the error-checking formulas, then the variance analysis sheets, the currency conversion controls, gone. Each deletion was accompanied by commentary. Unnecessary. Redundant. Overthinking. Academic. Miles. I tried once more. "The VLOOKUP validations you're removing connect to our ERP system. Without them, the model runs 40% faster." He hit delete again. I didn't come here from Goldman to babysit Excel formulas from 2015. Goldman. Of course, where models are built by armies of analysts who never see them again after the deal closes. Not like here, where we lived with our forecasts quarter after quarter, where every formula had been battle-tested through real crises. The room stayed silent. Even Richard Steinberg, our CFO, said nothing, just watched with the expression of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. But his silence was its own message. Miles was the future. I was the past. "From now on," Miles continued, "we're implementing my streamlined approach, clean, simple, transparent." He closed my model and opened his own creation, a skeletal framework that looked like it was built by someone who'd learned Excel from YouTube tutorials. "Elena, I'll need you to migrate your historical data into this format by end of week." I looked at his model. No audit trails, no scenario testing, no sensitivity analysis. It was a disaster waiting to happen, dressed up in modern formatting and slick conditional coloring. "Of course," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I'll need access to the revision history to ensure nothing critical is lost in translation." "No need." Miles waved dismissively. "Fresh start, clean slate, That's the Renard way. The meeting ended with polite applause for Miles's vision and fresh perspective. As people filed out, avoiding eye contact with me, I stayed seated, studying his model on the screen. Every deleted control was a ticking time bomb. Every removed validation was a door left open for error. Miles paused at the door, adjusting his blue-striped tie. Elena, I know change is hard, but sometimes we need to let go of our security blankets to grow. Your model might have worked in the past, but this is about the future. You're absolutely right, I said, closing my laptop. This is definitely about the future. He left with a satisfied smirk. Alone in the conference room, I opened my laptop again and began my real work, documenting everything: screenshots, formula mappings, process flows, every beautiful, complex, necessary piece of the model he'd just destroyed. Miles thought he'd won, but I knew something he didn't. In finance, gravity always wins. And when his house of cards collapsed, I'd be ready with the receipts. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 5:47 a.m., a full 2 hours before Miles would stride in with his venti macchiato and unearned confidence. The floor was empty except for the security guard who nodded sleepily as I badged in. Perfect. I connected my external drive, a compact SSD I'd bought specifically for this purpose, and began the systematic preservation of my legacy. Not just the model, but everything. The documentation I'd written over 6 years, the validation protocols, the SQL queries that fed our dashboards, the Python scripts that automated our monthly reports. Each file was time-stamped, versioned, and accompanied by detailed notes explaining its purpose and dependencies. Most importantly, I archived the change logs. Every formula I'd built included comments with dates and rationales. Added 2021-04-15, currency hedge adjustment after Swiss franc incident. Modified 2022-11-02, seasonal adjustment factor per Q3 audit findings. These weren't just formulas, they were institutional memory encoded in Excel cells. By 7:30, I'd created what I privately called the black box, a complete backup of our department's intellectual infrastructure. 3 copies, one on the external drive, one uploaded to my personal cloud storage, and one on a USB drive I'd mailed to my home address. Paranoid? Maybe. But I'd learned long ago that in corporate warfare, evidence was ammunition. At 8:15, Miles appeared at my cubicle. No greeting, just, HR wants to see you. Conference room B. 15 minutes. I'd expected this, but the timing was faster than anticipated. Miles wanted me gone before I could poison the well with the rest of the team. Smart, if predictable. The HR meeting was a masterpiece of corporate theater. Diane from Human Resources, whom I'd helped with her daughter's college finance homework just last month, couldn't meet my eyes as she read from a prepared script about restructuring and new directions. Miles sat beside her, typing on his phone, not even pretending to pay attention. "We value your contributions," Diane recited, "which is why we're offering a generous transition package. 2 months severance, continuation of benefits through quarter end, and..." She paused, glancing at Miles. "We'd like you to stay on for 2 weeks to ensure a smooth knowledge transfer." Miles finally looked up. "I need you to train me on your systems. Document everything. Make sure nothing falls through the cracks." The irony was delicious. He'd just publicly demolished my work as outdated and unnecessary, but privately needed me to explain how it all worked. I kept my expression neutral. "Of course, I want the transition to be seamless." I turned to Diane. "I'll need full system access during the transition period, archives, shared drives, everything, to create comprehensive documentation." "Whatever you need," Miles said quickly. Too quickly. He wanted me to teach him my job, then disappear quietly. Over the next 2 weeks, I became the most cooperative terminated employee in Northwick's history. Every morning, I sat with Miles for 3 hours, walking him through processes. But I was selective in my teaching. I showed him how to run reports, but not how to validate them. I taught him to update figures, but not how to spot anomalies. Most crucially, I documented every change he made to my systems. Why do you have 3 different exchange rate tables? He asked on day 3, already deleting 2 of them. The primary is for standard conversions. The second handles countries with currency controls. The third is for our hedge positions, I explained, watching him delete them anyway. Overcomplicated, one table is enough. Delete, delete, delete. I saved a copy labeled Miles Day 3, removed, FX controls. On day 7, he hard-coded several values that should have been formulas. These numbers haven't changed in 2 years, he justified. They're tied to our credit facility covenants. If our debt-to-equity ratio shifts, it won't. He typed fixed numbers over my formulas. I documented Miles Day 7, hard-coded covenant calculations. The pattern continued. Each day, he simplified. Each day, I documented. He was so confident, so certain that his MBA and Goldman pedigree made him immune to the complexity of reality. He didn't notice that I was creating a parallel archive of his destruction, a breadcrumb trail of every deleted safeguard. On my last day, he barely looked up when I placed my access badge on his desk. The documentation is all in the shared drive, I said, organized by date. Good. Good. He was already focused on something else, probably preparing for the monthly board presentation where he'd showcase his streamlined model. As I packed my desk, Jennifer from Risk stopped by. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Yes." I agreed, loud enough for others to hear. "But I'm sure Miles knows what he's doing. After all, he came from Goldman." The emphasis on Goldman was petty, but I allowed myself that small satisfaction. That evening, from my home office, I organized my files one last time. Each folder was labeled clearly: Original Model Pre-Miles, Daily Changes, Under Miles, Deleted, Controls, List, Risk, Assessments, Removed. The metadata told a story of systematic dismantling, dated and time-stamped. I opened a bottle of wine, a good Barolo I'd been saving, and registered my LLC, Graves Ledger Consulting. Simple. Professional. Ready. Miles thought he'd pushed out a dinosaur. What he'd actually done was free a surgeon to operate independently. And when his Frankenstein model inevitably flatlined, I'd be the only one who knew how to resuscitate it. The only question was how much that knowledge would cost. The beauty of watching a slow-motion disaster is knowing exactly when each piece will fail. From my home office, I maintained a clinical distance while monitoring the cascade of errors through my network of former colleagues who still had my personal cell number. Week 1 post-departure. Jennifer texted me a screenshot. "Is this right?" The depreciation schedule was calculating monthly instead of quarterly. A simple error, but one that would compound through every financial statement. I responded with a thinking emoji. Nothing more. Week 3. David from Treasury called during lunch. "Elena, hypothetically, if someone deleted the currency triangulation checks, how long before it showed up in reporting?" "Hypothetically, about 6 to 8 weeks." "Why?" "No reason, just curious." I marked my calendar. 6 to 8 weeks would put us right at quarter end. Meanwhile, I established Graves Ledger Consulting with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent years building financial architectures. My first client came through a LinkedIn message, a former vendor who'd watched me untangle their payment issues 2 years prior. They needed someone to audit their ERP implementation. Rate, $350 per hour. Child's play compared to what was coming. Week 5. The screenshots from inside Northwick became more frequent. Miles had discovered the joy of simplifying the consolidation process by manually overriding minority interest calculations. He'd renamed my carefully structured worksheets from descriptive names like Q3, Rev, Rec, IFRS, Adjustments, to Sheet 1, Sheet 2, Sheet 3. Sarah from Internal Audit sent me a photo from the parking garage, away from company Wi-Fi. He password protected all the formulas but forgot the password. Says it doesn't matter because we're not changing them anyway. Is he insane? I responded. I'm sure he has his reasons. But I was keeping detailed records. Every screenshot was saved with timestamps. Every panicked call was logged. I created a timeline in Visio, mapping each change Miles made to its inevitable consequence. The depreciation error would hit the P&L in week 8. The currency problems would surface in week 10. The consolidation issues would explode exactly at quarter close when they tried to file the 10Q. Week 6 brought unexpected entertainment. Miles sent a company-wide email celebrating the 45% efficiency improvement in financial reporting processes. He'd attached charts showing reduced processing time, fewer computational steps, and streamlined workflows. What he didn't show was accuracy metrics, because he wasn't measuring them. Why measure what you assume is perfect? My second client materialized through a referral, a mid-size manufacturer struggling with cost accounting. They'd heard I was available and moved fast. Rate, $400 per hour. The work was engaging but simple, nothing like the complex derivatives modeling I'd done at Northwick. I finished their project in half the allocated time, but kept the full budget. They were thrilled. I was building a war chest. Week 8 arrived with mathematical precision. Jennifer called me at 9 p.m., whispering, "The depreciation is off by $1.8 million. Miles says it's a rounding error, and to plug the difference." Plug it where? Other income. I actually laughed. He wants you to hide a depreciation error in other income? That's fraud adjacent. What do? Document everything. Email him asking for confirmation of his instruction. BCC your personal email. This isn't advice, just what I would do. Week 10. The currency crisis bloomed like a toxic flower. The triangulation errors had created phantom gains in subsidiaries that didn't actually exist. The consolidated statements showed the company making money in markets where they were actually losing it. David's panicked voicemail was barely coherent. "Elena, it's showing we made 3 million euros in Germany, but we don't even operate in Germany anymore. We closed that office 2 years ago." I didn't return the call. Instead, I focused on my third client, a private equity firm that needed someone to rebuild their portfolio valuation model. Rate, $500 per hour. They didn't even negotiate. Week 11, the first domino fell publicly. During the monthly board meeting, I heard this third hand through someone who heard from someone. Miles presented his streamlined reports. Richard Steinberg, the CFO, asked a simple question about the variance in international operations. Miles couldn't answer. He tried to pivot to his efficiency metrics, but board members aren't impressed by speed when the numbers don't make sense. Then came the text I'd been waiting for, from a number I didn't recognize. "Elena, this is Richard. Are you available for a consulting engagement? Urgent. Please call." I waited 2 hours before responding. Currently engaged with other clients. Could potentially discuss after reviewing scope. My rate structure has changed since leaving Northwick. His response was immediate. "What's your rate?" I poured myself a glass of wine before typing. Depends on urgency and complexity. Standard is $500 an hour. Urgent forensic work starts at $1,000. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "Can we meet tomorrow?" "I have a client meeting tomorrow. I could do Thursday at 3 p.m. Thursday works. I scheduled the meeting, then opened my timeline diagram. Every prediction had materialized on schedule. Miles had demolished 6 years of carefully constructed financial architecture in 11 weeks. The rebuild would take hundreds of hours, at $1,000 per hour minimum. I updated my files, adding the latest screenshots and documentation to the folder labeled Evidence Chain. Each file told part of the story: the systematic destruction of controls, the ignored warnings, the compounding errors. Miles thought he'd been simplifying. In reality, he'd been building my case for why my expertise was not just valuable, but irreplaceable. And the best part? We hadn't even reached quarter end yet. The real fireworks were still to come. Freedom tastes different when you're watching your replacement drown from a distance. My consulting practice, Graves Ledger Consulting, had officially been operational for 11 weeks. and I was already turning down clients. The market for someone who could untangle complex financial systems was surprisingly robust, or maybe unsurprisingly, given how many companies had their own Miles Renards. My morning routine had evolved into something delicious. Coffee at 6 a.m., client work until noon, lunch at the bistro downtown where Northwick executives never ventured, then afternoon calls with new prospects. I'd raised my rates twice, and nobody blinked. Turns out, when you're solving million-dollar problems, nobody quibbles over a few thousand in hourly fees. The Thursday meeting with Richard Steinberg never happened. He canceled an hour before, rescheduled for the following Monday, then canceled again. I knew this dance, the maybe we can fix it internally shuffle. Pride is expensive in corporate America. Instead, I focused on my current crown jewel, a Fortune 500 subsidiary whose previous CFO had built a forecasting model so complex even he couldn't explain it before his sudden retirement. They were paying me $750 an hour to reverse engineer and document it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being paid premium rates to do exactly what Miles had prevented me from doing at Northwick. Week 13 brought the first public signs of distress. Northwick's preliminary earnings announcement was delayed. The press release cited additional time needed to ensure accuracy of international operations reporting. Corporate speak for, our numbers don't add up, and we don't know why. My phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues. External auditors arrived today, not scheduled. Miles locked in conference room all day with legal. Heard him yelling about missing worksheets. I documented each message, adding to my growing archive. The folder was now organized into subfolders: pre-crisis, crisis emergence, crisis escalation. I was currently filing into crisis emergence, but I could see crisis escalation from here. My LinkedIn inbox, meanwhile, was becoming entertaining. Recruiters who'd ignored me for years were suddenly very interested in my unique skill set and extensive experience. One offered me a CFO position at a startup. Another wanted me to lead financial transformation at a retail chain. I responded to none of them. Week 14, Jennifer called from her personal phone at 11 p.m. Elena, I'm going to quit. I can't do this anymore. Today, Miles asked me to change historical data to make the trends look better. Actually change last year's reported numbers. Did you document that request? Email, screenshot, and forwarded to my lawyer. You have a lawyer? After the depreciation plug thing, yeah. This is beyond incompetence now. I advised her to stay until she had another offer, then hung up and made a note. Potential whistleblower situation developing. If Jennifer went to the SEC, Northwick would need forensic accounting support. My rate for litigation support started at $2,000 per hour. Week 15 arrived with a whimper that pretended to be a roar. Northwick announced a strategic restructuring of the finance department and the hire of a temporary consultant to assist with system optimization. The consultant was someone from Miles's Goldman network, probably charging $500 an hour to tell them what they wanted to hear. But the real intelligence came from David, who met me for coffee in a suburb 20 miles from downtown. It's worse than you know, he said, sliding a USB drive across the table. Don't open this here, but you should see what your model looks like now. That evening, I opened the files on an air-gapped laptop. What I saw was architectural carnage. Miles hadn't just simplified my model, he'd gutted it and rebuilt it with the financial equivalent of duct tape and prayer. Hard-coded numbers everywhere. Circular references that somehow didn't error out because he'd turned off iterative calculations. Formula links to files that no longer existed. Returning ref. Errors that he'd hidden by painting the font white. But the masterpiece was his treatment of foreign exchange. He deleted my complex but accurate triangulation system and replaced it with a single exchange rate table, updated manually when he remembered, which apparently wasn't often. The Japanese subsidiary was being converted at a rate from 6 months ago. The European operations were using rates from different dates, creating impossible arbitrage gains that existed only in Excel. I took screenshots of everything. then ran a comparison analysis against my archived original. In 3 hours, I documented 247 critical changes, each one a potential material misstatement. At an average of 2 hours to fix each issue, that was nearly 500 hours of work. At my current rates, that was $500,000. Week 16. The news broke on a Wednesday. Northwick's stock dropped 12% after announcing they would miss the filing deadline for their 10Q. Technical difficulties in financial reporting systems was the official excuse. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece questioning the company's internal controls. Short sellers started circling. My phone rang. Richard Steinberg. Elena, we need to talk. I'm available for consultation. My rate for urgent forensic work is whatever you want. Can you start tomorrow? I'll need to check my calendar. I have existing client commitments. Elena, please. His voice cracked slightly. The auditors are threatening a going concern opinion. The SEC is asking questions. We need someone who understands the systems. I let the silence stretch before responding. Send me a formal engagement letter. My rate is $5,000 per hour. 40-hour minimum commitment. Paid in advance. I'll need full access to all systems, historical files, and a private workspace. And Richard, I report to you directly, not to Miles. Done. Whatever you need. After hanging up, I opened my archive and reviewed the timeline I'd created weeks ago. Every prediction had materialized, every warning ignored, every deleted control now a gaping wound in their financial reporting. Miles had thought he was streamlining. Instead, he'd created a $500,000 consulting opportunity. For me, the call came from an unexpected source, Margaret Wu from Legal, not Richard. We'd worked together on the acquisition of a Brazilian subsidiary 3 years ago. When my models had caught a $4 million tax liability the sellers tried to hide. She remembered. Elena, I need to speak with you off the record. Can you meet me at Printers Row, the coffee shop on Dearborn? Printers Row was nowhere near Northwick's offices. Smart woman. She was already there when I arrived, nursing a black coffee in the corner booth, her usually perfect composure showing cracks. Her Hermes briefcase sat beside her like a guard dog. How bad is it? I asked, sliding in across from her. Worse than Richard knows. We're about to enter due diligence for the Meridian acquisition, $280 million deal, been in negotiations for 8 months. If our financials are questionable. She didn't need to finish. A blown acquisition would tank the stock price and trigger the debt covenants. When's the diligence deadline? 6 weeks. The data room opens in 2. Elena. We need those numbers clean, audited, and bulletproof. The other side has KKR's forensic team. They'll find every weakness. I stirred my cappuccino slowly. Miles's model can't handle acquisition accounting. I know because I built the original M&A module. And from what I've seen, he deleted it. Margaret's face went pale. Deleted it? The entire module? Replaced it with something he built. Let me guess. It doesn't properly handle purchase price allocations, earn-out calculations, or pro forma adjustments. She pulled out her phone, showed me an email from the integration team. They can't even get basic combined statements to balance. The elimination entries are off by millions. That's because he hard-coded the consolidation percentages. If ownership stakes changed even slightly, the whole thing breaks. Can you fix it? I can. But Margaret, we both know the problem isn't just technical. Miles is still there. He'll interfere, override, claim credit, or worse, make more changes while I'm fixing things. She leaned back, studied me. What if I told you Miles is about to have other problems? Serious ones. The kind that require full attention from legal counsel. My expression remained neutral, but internally I was fascinated. The historical data changes? Jennifer Kim filed a formal complaint with the audit committee. She has emails, screenshots, recorded phone calls, Miles explicitly instructing her to falsify prior period numbers. Margaret's voice dropped. That's securities fraud, Elena. The SEC doesn't play with that. The pieces were sliding into place beautifully. So while Miles is dealing with legal issues, you'd have free reign to fix the systems, report directly to Richard and the board. Miles wouldn't even have access to the financial systems, legal hold on all his activities. When? Tomorrow morning, General Counsel is meeting with him at 9 a.m. By 9:30, his access will be suspended pending investigation. I did quick math. 6 weeks to merger deadline. Probably 300 hours of work to rebuild the model properly. Another 200 for acquisition integration. At $5,000 per hour. My rate for M&A work is different, I said. Given the urgency and complexity, Margaret didn't flinch. How much? $7,000 per hour, but I'll guarantee clean numbers for the diligence. Done. I'll need a few things. First, complete autonomy, no interference from anyone, including Richard. Second, I want Jennifer Kim as my liaison. She knows where the bodies are buried. Third, a completion bonus if we close the Meridian deal, $500,000. Margaret's eye twitched at the bonus number, but she nodded. I'll make it happen. One more thing, I wanted in writing that any intellectual property I create remains jointly owned. Northwick can use it, but so can I, for my consulting practice. That's unusual. So is paying someone to rebuild what you destroyed. I'm creating new IP to fix this. I should benefit from it. She thought for a moment. I'll draft language that works. That night, I pulled up my archived files and began planning the rebuild. But this wouldn't be a simple restoration. I'd create something better, Model 2.0, with every lesson learned from watching Miles's destruction. More robust, more transparent, but also more sophisticated. The kind of system that would become the industry standard, that other companies would pay me to implement. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Did you hear? Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Miles is done. I texted back. Focus on documenting everything. We have work to do. Then I opened a new spreadsheet and began architecting the future. Each module would be a masterpiece, the consolidation engine that could handle any ownership structure, the FX system that would update automatically from Bloomberg feeds, the acquisition model that would make due diligence teams weep with joy. Miles had thought he was replacing me. Instead, he'd created the perfect conditions for my evolution from employee to essential contractor, from cost center to profit center, from financial architect to financial savior. The crisis was about to explode into the open, and I had a front row seat to the show. Director's chair, actually. With my name on it and a $7,000 per hour price tag, I poured myself a glass of the good Bordeaux I'd been saving. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight, I savored the beautiful symmetry of it all. Miles had torn down my cathedral to build his strip mall. Now I'd be paid a fortune to build something even grander on the ruins. The $12 million discovery happened at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday. According to the email timestamp, I wasn't supposed to receive it. The external auditor had meant to send it only to Richard and the audit committee. But someone's shaky finger had included me in the CC field. Divine intervention, perhaps, or just the kind of exhausted mistake that happens when forensic accountants have been working 20-hour days. The subject line was innocuous. Preliminary findings, international revenue recognition. The content was a bomb. Material misstatement identified in Q4 international revenue, improper recognition of 12.3 monies in contracted but undelivered services. Appears to result from elimination of systematic controls in forecasting model. See attached variance analysis. I read it 3 times, then looked at the attachment. The auditors had found what I'd predicted in week 10, the phantom gains from the broken FX triangulation. But it was worse. Miles's simplified model had been auto-recognizing revenue from multi-year contracts all at once, instead of spreading them according to GAAP. The deleted controls would have caught this. The validation sheets would have screamed warnings. But those were unnecessary complexity, according to Miles. My phone rang at 6:15 a.m., Richard, sounding like he'd aged a decade overnight. Elena, I assume you saw the email. I did. Can you fix this? The technical fix, yes, the audit trail to prove when and how it happened. Also, yes, the reputation damage? That's above my pay grade. How long for the technical fix? I already knew the answer, but pretended to calculate. To properly rebuild the International Revenue Recognition module, reconnect it to the ERP, implement proper controls, and create documentation that will satisfy the auditors, minimum 120 hours. But Richard, that's just patching one hole. The entire model is compromised. Silence. Then, Victor wants to see you. Victor Halden, CEO. In 5 years at Northwick, I'd presented to him exactly twice. When? Now, he's in the office. Been here all night. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the one I'd worn to interview at competitors before deciding to build my own practice. The drive downtown was surreal in the pre-dawn darkness. The city still asleep while Northwick's C-suite was imploding. The executive floor was fully lit, populated by exhausted-looking people in yesterday's clothes. The smell of stale coffee and fear was palpable. Victor's assistant, normally impeccable, had mascara smudges under her eyes. He's waiting for you. Victor Halden looked like a man staring at the end of his career. At 61, he'd built Northwick from a regional player to a national force. Now he sat behind his desk, tie loosened, studying printouts of my original model, the one Miles had destroyed. Sit, he said without preamble. Margaret tells me you can fix this. I can fix the systems. The credibility issue is yours to solve. He laughed bitterly. Honest? Good. Miles told me you were resistant to innovation. That your models were unnecessarily complex. I believed him. His Harvard MBA was very convincing, I'm sure. Wharton. But point taken. He pushed the printouts toward me. This is your original work? Yes, every formula, every control, every validation check that could have prevented this. And you have documentation of what Miles changed. I pulled out my tablet, showed him the timeline, every deletion, every hard-coded number, every removed control, dated and annotated. His face went grayer with each slide. You knew this would happen. I suspected. Financial systems are like architecture. You can't remove load-bearing walls without consequences. Why didn't you warn us? Would you have listened? I was the dinosaur being replaced by the innovator from Goldman, remember? He was quiet for a long moment. What do you need? Complete autonomy, no interference from anyone, including you. A team of 3 analysts of my choosing, I'll probably pull from the audit group, full access to all historical data, including the backups Miles probably doesn't know exist. And most importantly, Miles's complete absence from the building while I work. Done. Margaret mentioned your rate. That was before I knew about the $12 million misstatement. My rate for regulatory crisis management is $5,000 per hour. He didn't even blink. Fine. When can you start? I'll need the engagement letter signed first, but I can have a preliminary assessment ready for the board by tomorrow morning. The board meets at 7 a.m. Then I'll present at 7 a.m. As I left his office, I passed Miles in the hallway. He was flanked by 2 men in suits, legal counsel, from their bearing. His Goldman confidence was gone, replaced by the hollow look of someone watching their career evaporate. He saw me, started to speak, then his lawyer touched his arm. They continued walking. Jennifer was waiting in what used to be my office, now converted to a conference room. She'd brought 3 boxes of documentation and a laptop. Ready to raise the dead? She asked. Better. We're going to build something that can't be killed. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder labeled Resurrection Protocol. The complete blueprint I'd been refining for weeks. Every module, every control, every validation check, improved and fortified. The $12 million error was just the tremor before the earthquake. Once the auditors started really digging, they'd find more. But each discovery was billable hours for me, each fix adding to my value. Miles had handed me the opportunity of a lifetime, to be paid a fortune to prove that my complexity wasn't unnecessary. It was invaluable. The boardroom at 7 a.m. was a tribunal disguised as a meeting. 12 faces turned toward me as I entered. Board members I'd only seen in annual reports, plus Victor, Richard, and Margaret. Miles's empty chair stood out like a missing tooth. I'd spent the night creating a presentation that would be etched in their memories. Not PowerPoint fluff, but forensic evidence presented with surgical precision. Good morning. I'm Elena Graves, formerly Senior Financial Analyst, currently engaged as an external consultant to address your reporting crisis. I clicked to my first slide, a split screen showing my original model versus Miles's version. What you're looking at is the financial equivalent of a heart transplant where the surgeon removed the heart but forgot to connect the arteries. No one smiled. Good. This wasn't the time for levity. Let me show you exactly how $12 million in revenue was misrecognized. I pulled up the live model on screen, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Here's the original revenue recognition module I built in 2019. Notice these formula chains. They check contract terms, delivery milestones, and geographical tax implications before allowing any revenue to be booked. I switched screens. Here's Miles's simplified version. One formula, no checks. It books revenue the moment a contract is signed, regardless of delivery status. For domestic contracts, the impact was minimal. But international contracts with multi-year delivery schedules? I clicked again. Phantom revenue, $12.3 million worth. Board member Harrison Watts, the one with 3 decades of banking experience, leaned forward. This is elementary accounting. How did our auditors miss it? They didn't miss it. They flagged it in their interim review 6 weeks ago. The response from financial leadership was that it was a timing difference that would self-correct. I pulled up the email chain. Miles's dismissive response highlighted, it did not self-correct. What else? Victor's voice was granite. The $12 million is the headline. The real story is worse. I switched to a new visualization, a flowchart showing data dependencies. Miles didn't just simplify, he severed connections. The FX module no longer talks to the consolidation engine. The depreciation schedules don't sync with the asset register. The intercompany eliminations are being done manually in Excel with last quarter's ownership percentages. Meaning, as Patricia Torres, chair of the Audit Committee. Meaning every number you've reported this quarter is suspect. The $12 million is what we found. Based on my preliminary analysis, you have between $30 and $45 million in reporting errors across all modules. The silence was absolute. Richard finally spoke. Can you fix it? I can do better than fix it. I can build you a system that's both sophisticated and transparent. Every control will have a purpose statement. Every formula will be documented. But more importantly, I clicked to my next slide. I'll build in redundancy that prevents any single person from destroying it again. How long? Victor asked. To repair the immediate damage and get you through the Meridian acquisition. 6 weeks. To build the complete new architecture? 3 months. But I need absolute authority and zero interference. And if Miles returns, Patricia asked carefully, aware of the legal implications. Then I walk. Today, and you can explain to the SEC why your remediation expert left mid-crisis. Victor looked around the table. All in favor of giving Ms. Graves complete authority over financial systems remediation. 12 hands rose without hesitation. Now, I continued. Let's discuss the actual damage. I pulled up a heat map of the company's financial statements. Red zones indicated errors, yellow indicated uncertainty, green meant clean. The screen looked like a Christmas decoration gone wrong, mostly red with specks of yellow. Each red zone represents hours of work. The revenue recognition alone will take 120 hours to rebuild. The consolidation engine, another 80. The FX module, 60. The depreciation schedules, 40. I clicked through each one, the hours adding up on a counter in the corner. Total remediation, approximately 500 hours. At your rate, Harrison did quick math, $2.5 million, plus the completion bonus when Meridian closes. Margaret added another $500,000. $3 million to fix what one man destroyed in 3 months. Patricia said quietly. No, I corrected. $3 million to build something indestructible. Your current crisis isn't just about bad numbers, it's about trust. The market doesn't trust your reporting. The auditors don't trust your controls. The board doesn't trust management. I'm not just fixing formulas, I'm rebuilding credibility. I clicked to my final slide, a Gantt chart showing the remediation timeline. Week 1, stop the bleeding. Week 2, rebuild critical modules. Weeks 3 and 4, integration and testing. Week 5, auditor validation. Week 6, clean data room for Meridian. And Miles? Victor asked. Is irrelevant, his access is revoked, his changes are documented, and his improvements are evidence. What matters now is moving forward. I closed my laptop and looked at each board member in turn. You brought in Miles because you thought my complexity was the problem, but complexity isn't the enemy. It's the price of accuracy at scale. You can have simple or you can have correct. You cannot have both. Victor stood. Ms. Graves, you have whatever you need. Richard will handle the contract. When can you start? I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar. I've already started. My team begins arriving at 8 a.m. We'll have preliminary repairs in place by market close. As the board filed out, Patricia stopped beside me. That comment about simple versus correct, was that aimed at us? No, I replied, gathering my materials. It was aimed at everyone who's ever confused sophistication with complication. My models were never too complex. They were exactly as complex as reality required. She nodded slowly. Send me daily updates. I want to watch this resurrection. Alone in the boardroom, I looked at Miles's empty chair and thought about his sneering comment about my kindergarten model. In 6 weeks, my kindergarten work would save his Goldman legacy from becoming a Harvard Business School case study in failure. But they'd pay me $3 million for the privilege. 6 weeks later, the Meridian acquisition closed without a single hiccup. The data room had been immaculate. Their forensic accountants found nothing to challenge, and the stock price had recovered to pre-crisis levels. But I wasn't there for the champagne celebration. I was in my home office, submitting my final invoice, 523 hours at $5,000 per hour, plus the $500,000 completion bonus. Total, $3,115,000. The wire transfer hit my account within 2 hours. Victor Halden didn't mess around with payments when his company's survival was at stake. But the real closure came the next morning. Margaret had arranged one final meeting, not in a conference room, but in the executive boardroom. The same room where Miles had first been introduced as the future of Northwick's financial operations. The entire C-suite was present, along with the board members who'd flown in specifically for this. And there, in the corner, sat Miles. His lawyers had negotiated a departure that avoided criminal charges in exchange for full cooperation and a lifetime ban from financial services. He looked smaller somehow. His Wharton confidence evaporated like morning dew under an unforgiving sun. Victor gestured for me to take the podium. Ms. Graves has prepared a final presentation on the new financial architecture. I opened my laptop, projecting the new model's dashboard onto the screen. It was beautiful, elegant in its complexity, transparent in its logic, bulletproof in its controls. Every formula had a purpose statement, every connection was mapped, every potential point of failure had a redundancy. This is Northwick 3.0, I began, clicking through the modules. It's not just a repair of what was broken, it's an evolution. The revenue recognition module now integrates with legal's contract database in real time. The FX system pulls live rates from 3 sources and triangulates automatically. The consolidation engine can handle any ownership structure you throw at it, from simple subsidiaries to complex joint ventures. I clicked to the audit trail system, but here's the real innovation. Every change, every edit, every formula modification is logged, time-stamped, and requires 2-factor authentication. No single person, regardless of title, can delete core functionality without triggering alerts to the audit committee. The Miles Protocol, someone whispered. Not quite quietly enough. I smiled coldly. I prefer to call it the Graves Guarantee. This system cannot be simplified into failure. Then I turned to the compliance scorecard, all green lights. Your auditors have signed off. The SEC has closed their inquiry. Meridian's team called it the most sophisticated financial architecture they've ever seen in a mid-cap company. You're not just compliant, you're best in class. Victor stood. Ms. Graves, on behalf of the board, I want to… Actually, I interrupted, something I'd never done in my 5 years as an employee. I have one more slide. I clicked to a simple text slide with 2 bullet points. First rule of financial systems: never delete what you don't understand. Second rule of financial systems: the architect's fee is always less than the reconstruction cost. The room was silent. Miles stared at his hands. 18 weeks ago, I said, looking directly at him. Someone held up my work and called it kindergarten homework. That homework just saved this company from regulatory disaster, preserved a $280 million acquisition, and prevented what could have been the end of Northwick as an independent entity. I closed my laptop and picked up my bag. The system is yours to use, protected by our IP agreement. My documentation is comprehensive enough that any competent analyst can maintain it. Though, I paused at the door. My consulting rates are always available if you need them. Elena, Victor called out, would you consider coming back? Name your price. Chief Financial Officer, Chief Risk Officer, whatever title you want. I turned back one final time. No, thank you. I've discovered I prefer being the person companies call when they realize complexity isn't their enemy. Incompetence is. The last thing I saw before the elevator doors closed was Miles, still sitting in that corner chair, staring at the screen showing my model. The one he'd destroyed, now rebuilt and immortal, bearing my name in every module header. Graves Financial Architecture V3.0. That afternoon, I incorporated my success into a Harvard Business Review article. The Hidden Cost of Simplification, a $3 million case study. I didn't name names, but anyone in Chicago financial circles would know exactly what company and which MBA graduate I was discussing. The article went viral in financial leadership forums. My consulting phone hasn't stopped ringing since. As for Miles, last I heard, he was teaching Introduction to Excel at a community college in Wisconsin. Turns out, when you Google his name, my article is the first result. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's being paid $5,000 an hour to clean up the mess left by someone who thought your work was kindergarten homework. Bok jiao tien jikong mat 12 trio jiu. Jung bao gio sa taikien trut su ki kong trin jang zi. That's what I told them. And they paid me $3 million to learn that lesson. Thank you so much for listening to this story of sweet corporate justice. I'm curious, where are you listening to this? Are you on your commute, at the gym, or maybe enjoying this during your lunch break? Drop a comment below and let me know. I love connecting with listeners from all around the world. If this story of workplace revenge resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share your own thoughts about dealing with difficult bosses or incompetent managers. Have you ever witnessed someone's arrogance lead to their downfall? Let's discuss in the comments below.